Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Ask Rusty Law, the podcast where we break down the law in plain language so you know your rights and understand how the legal system actually works for real people. I'm your host, Rusty Messer with Big River Trial Attorneys. Today, we are diving deep into something that has completely transformed how automobile crash cases are investigated and litigated. We are talking about electronic and video data from vehicles. This is what I like to call the hidden witness inside almost every car, truck, and 18-wheeler on the road today. So stick around, because whether you're a crash victim or a family member of someone who's been injured in a crash, just somebody who drives a car, which is like pretty much all of us, this episode is going to open your eyes to evidence that can make or break a case. Let's get into it. All right, let's start at the beginning. When most people think about evidence in a car crash case, they think about maybe the police report, maybe some photos of the vehicle at the repair shop, maybe witness statements if there was somebody there. And look, all of that matters. But here is what a lot of people, and honestly, even some lawyers, don't fully appreciate. Modern vehicles are rolling computers, and they are recording data constantly. So think about your smartphone. It knows where you've been, how fast you were moving, what apps you opened, what time you woke up, and your car is doing something remarkably similar. And when a crash happens, that data doesn't just disappear, it gets frozen. And if you know what you're looking for, and if you move fast enough to preserve it, that data can tell the story of a crash more accurately than any eyewitness ever could. So today we are going to cover 4 big areas. So 1 are the types of electronic and video data that can be recovered from vehicles. 2 is the equipment needed to actually pull that data out. 3 are the experts who do this work and how to find the right ones. And 4 is how this data translates into evidence that proves or disproves liability in court. Right. So let's start with the data itself. The single most well-known piece of technology in this space is the event data recorder. It's also called an EDR. And you've probably heard these called black boxes. This is actually a term borrowed from the aviation industry. Almost every passenger vehicle manufactured in the United States since 2013 is required by federal law to have an EDR. And many vehicles had them going back into the 90s, so even before it was required. Here's what an EDR typically records. And these figures are captured in the seconds immediately before, during, and just after a crash. So it's going to capture the vehicle speed, not what the driver claims they were going, not what the posted speed limit was, but what the vehicle was actually doing. Engine throttle position. And this is, was the driver accelerating, holding steady? It's going to capture brake application. Did the driver hit the brakes? When? How hard? It's going to check seatbelt status. Was the driver buckled? Were the passengers buckled? It's going to capture airbag deployment. So when the airbags fired and what triggered them. It'll capture steering input in some of the newer vehicles. It can actually record the wheel angle. It will record the change in velocity, and this is referred to as delta V. So this is the force of the impact measured in what are known as G-forces. The EDR will capture engine RPM, cruise control status. Now, I want to emphasize something. This data is measured in milliseconds. So we're talking about a 5-second pre-crash window captured in incredible detail. That data can tell us whether a driver even touched the brakes before impact. It can tell us the exact speed 3 seconds before the collision, and that is powerful, powerful evidence. But EDRs are just the beginning. So the next category of electronic control module data is what is called the ECM, or sometimes it's called the PCM, the powertrain control module. This is the brain of the vehicle. In commercial trucks, there's 18-wheelers, semi-trucks, this is extraordinary rich territory. The ECM on a commercial truck records the hours of service. So how long has this driver been behind the wheel? The speed history over time, not just at the moment of crash, but over hours and days. Hard braking events. Every time the truck braked hard, it's logged. Hard acceleration events. Engine fault codes where there are mechanical failures that the driver or the company should have known about. It will capture idle time, geographic positioning data in some systems, right? So that can be huge. For trucking cases, this ECM data is absolute gold. It can show that a driver had been on the road for 14 hours when the federal limit is 11. It can show that this truck had been speeding repeatedly in the hours before the crash. So that's not just negligence. That can be evidence of recklessness, and that can open the door to different types of damages in some jurisdictions. Now, let's talk about GPS and telematics data. So many commercial fleets, maybe trucking companies, think of delivery services, or even rideshare companies, they use something called telematics systems. So these are third-party devices installed in the vehicle that transmit real-time data back to the company. So these are systems like Samsara or Lytx, Geotab, Omnitrax is another one. So we're talking about precise GPS location updated every few seconds, speed at every location, acceleration and braking behavior, driver behavior scores, maybe route history. Here's the kicker. The company has all of this data sitting on a server somewhere, and they know it, which is exactly why if you're in a crash involving a commercial vehicle, you need a lawyer sending a preservation letter out within hours, not days, not months, hours. Companies have been known to overwrite or delete this data, and if it's gone, it's gone. So they'll say, well, I'm sorry, the system overwrites every 2 or 3 days, and we didn't know there was a crash, but they absolutely knew. They just wanted it to overwrite. All right. The next big category is video data, and this one is growing faster than just about anything else in this space. So we can get video data from several sources. Dash cams are very popular now. These can be both forward-facing dash cams and interior-facing cameras. These are increasingly common in commercial vehicles, in fleet operation vehicles, maybe like delivery vehicles. These can be required. And in a crash, dash cam footage can show exactly what the driver was doing in the moments before impact. Was he on his phone? Was he looking away from the road? Dash cam footage is some of the most compelling evidence you can put in front of a jury. Backup cameras and surround view cameras. These are on many modern passenger vehicles. Lots of vehicles have multiple cameras. And in some cases, that footage is stored on board, at least temporarily. So these are systems like maybe infotainment or sync, where the data is actually stored on the vehicle. This is one people don't think about. Your car's infotainment system may have logs showing that a Bluetooth call was active, that a specific address was entered into navigation, or even what the driver was listening to. That metadata can be relevant to distraction claims. So phone data, if it's linked to the vehicle, so when the phone pairs to a car's Bluetooth system, that pairing event is logged. We can cross-reference phone records with vehicle data to show that a driver was maybe on a call or actively using their phone at the time. Let's talk about surveillance cameras and traffic cameras. So now we're not talking about from the vehicle itself, but the surrounding area. This can be critical to corroborate everything. So maybe intersection cameras, business security cameras, if it happened in front of a bank or something like that, even like a residential Ring doorbell system. Again, you have to move fast to preserve this footage before it gets overwritten. Let's talk about the Advanced Driver Assistance System data. This is called an ADAS, right? This is the cutting edge. Vehicles equipped with lane departure warning, maybe forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. These systems are sensing the road environment, and the car is making decisions, and they're logging data about those decisions. Did the system detect the hazard? Did it try to intervene? did the driver override that? So this data can be extraordinarily revealing. So now you're probably wondering, how do you actually get this data out of the vehicle? Can you just like plug in your laptop and download it? And it's a little more complicated than that. But the short answer is yes, if you have the right tools and the right training. The industry standard device for downloading EDR data comes from passenger vehicles. It is the Bosch CDR tool. CDR stands for Crash Data Retrieval. This is the tool recognized by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, by law enforcement, and by courts across the country. The Bosch CDR system includes specialized cables for different vehicle makes and models. It includes software that translates this raw data into readable, court-admissible reports. But there are other tools as well. Another one is known as the Lytx system. And this was developed by a company called Lytx, I think it is. And they are used by some law enforcement agencies and private investigators. Lytx stands for, I think it's a Data Event Recorder Electronic Kit. Auto PI, similar. There's OBD2 readers. These can be used for accessing live vehicle data through what's known as an OBD2 port. This is a diagnostic port up under the dashboard. However, for crash-specific EDR data, the Bosch CDR is the gold standard. Now, for commercial trucks, the tools are different. You have Dearborn Group's DG Technologies tools. These are widely used for heavy-duty truck ECM data across multiple different companies and systems. NEXIQ USB link is another heavy-duty diagnostic interface that's pretty common. Bendix, ACOM Diagnostic, and one known as WABCO. These are all used specifically for electronic braking systems on commercial trucks, which will have their own separate data modules. And that's something big. And these big trucks, they'll have multiple data modules. For telematics and GPS data, it's typically not a physical download. It's a data preservation request that you got to get directly to the telematics provider. So whether that's Samsara or Geotab or one of those others. The data, it lives in the cloud, and you get it through the legal process. Subpoenas, preservation letters, sometimes maybe even an emergency court order if a company is threatening to delete it. Now, I want to mention the top manufacturers of EDR and data collection equipment, because understanding who makes these tools helps you understand the credibility and the standardization of the process. So, as I said earlier, Bosch is the undisputed leader in EDR retrieval for passenger vehicles. The Bosch CDR tool is the industry standard, period. Dearborn Group, or DG Technologies, they dominate the heavy-duty truck space for ECM data retrieval. Lytx, used to be known as DriveCam. It is one of the biggest names in fleet camera systems and telematics. Their cameras record inward and outward. So their data has been used in countless crash cases. Samsara is a rapidly growing telematics and fleet management provider. They have GPS and event data, and it's become increasingly common evidence in commercial vehicle cases. Geotab is another major player in the commercial fleet telematics. They have some very granular vehicle data, really breaking down what happened. I think there's a company called Mobileye. They're actually owned by Intel. They make the ADAS sensors and the systems in a lot of vehicles, and they have their own data related to collision warnings and interventions. There's another company called Aptiv. They were formerly known as Delphi. They manufacture electronic control systems that are in a lot of the vehicles, and their modules are frequently the subject of a forensic download. So we have talked about what data is out there and what the tools are that are used to get this data. But who actually does this work? Because pulling a CDR report is one thing, understanding it and interpreting it and explaining it to a jury can be something else entirely. So there are several categories of experts your attorney should be working with. One are accident reconstructionists. These are the foundation of most serious crash cases, and a qualified accident reconstructionist typically has maybe like an engineering background, a heavy law enforcement background where they've investigated lots and lots of claims and done specialized training, often a degree in mechanical or civil engineering. They use physical evidence from the scene, things like skid marks, gouge marks, vehicle crush, and then they combine this with electronic data to recreate the crash. Many reconstructionists are trained and certified in the Bosch CDR downloads, and they can pull and interpret the data themselves. So what you're going to be looking for are credentials like ACTAR, that's ACTAR, which I think is the Accreditation Commission for the Traffic Accident Reconstruction. So these reconstructionists meet a high standard of training and testing. Maybe a forensic engineer. So these are engineers who specialize in failure analysis. So if the crash involves some kind of like a mechanical defect, a brake failure, or a steering failure, a forensic engineer might be able to dig into this ECM data, get the fault codes and the vehicle's maintenance records to determine whether there was a defect that caused or contributed to the crash. Now, there are trucking safety experts. So if your case involves a commercial vehicle, you want someone who knows the federal motor carrier safety regulations cold, right? These experts can look at ECM data and maybe showing hours of service violations and explain to a jury exactly what federal regulations were broken and why that matters. There are digital forensic experts for recovering data, maybe from like infotainment systems or maybe a synced phone or dash cam or something like that. These experts specialize in digital evidence preservation and chain of custody. This is critical if the evidence is going to hold up in court. When we talk about telematics and black box analysts, some of the experts specialize in specifically interpreting telematics from commercial fleet vehicles. They might understand like the nuances of how the different systems log data, how one does it versus another, what the different timestamps mean, and how to identify gaps or anomalies that might suggest the data has been tampered with, and do not put that past the defendants. Now, then you can get into what is known as a human factors expert. They understand how vehicles and people interact, and they can use this electronic data to develop an opinion about maybe perception or reaction time, whether a driver's speed gave them enough time to avoid a crash, or whether there was some distraction that played a role. So let me be real with you for a moment. One of the most important things an attorney can do after a serious crash is get the right experts on the phone, involved in the case immediately. The data is perishable. Vehicles get repaired or crushed. Telematics servers overwrite on a rolling basis. Others will keep data for like 72 hours. So a lot of attorneys want to work the case up, see if they can settle pre-suit. And then when that's not happening, then all right, well, now we're going to file suit. Now we're going to get an expert. It's probably too late to get a lot of that data. You've got to get your experts in early. You have to move like it's an emergency, because it is. All right, this is the part I really want people to understand, because this is where the rubber meets the road in litigation. How does all of this data actually translate into winning or losing a case? So let me walk you through some real world scenario. So one of the most common scenarios is well, I wasn't speeding defense. So the at-fault driver tells the police, or maybe tells the insurance adjuster, or tells anybody else who will listen, I was only going 40 miles per hour. I don't know how this happened. And the speed limit was 45. So, it wasn't my fault. This is a classic defensive story. But then once you get the EDR and it shows 3 seconds before impact, the vehicle was traveling 72 miles per hour and maybe a zero brake application until 0.4 seconds before impact. This is what engineers call the perception reaction deficit zone, meaning the driver basically was going too fast and reacted too late to prevent the crash, and his story falls apart. Cases completely change. So now we're talking about reckless driving, not a simple accident. All right. The EDR data does not lie. It does not have a bad memory. It does not have a motive to protect the driver. And when your expert takes the stand and explains those numbers to a jury in plain language, it can be devastating for the defense. All right, let's talk about maybe a fatigued truck driver. So an 18-wheeler rear-ends a family's minivan on the interstate. The truck company says, well, their driver was compliant with the hours of service and they have all these paper logs to prove it. We subpoena the ECM data from the truck. Maybe we subpoena the telematics records from their GPS provider. And here's what we find out. The truck was moving according to the GPS pings during the time when the paper logs say that the driver was off duty. So it wasn't really off duty, right? The electronic data shows a different story. So the ECM shows the engine was running and the truck was in motion, puts it at different geographical locations. The driver just falsified his logs. He'd been driving for 16 hours straight. And that's not just negligence, that's fraud. And the trucking company employed him, trained him, dispatched him, and failed to monitor his compliance. So they can be on the hook too. That electronic data turned a difficult case into a clear case, and it opened the door to punitive damages against the company in some places. All right, let's talk about a third scenario, maybe disproving a false claim. Always want to be honest with you that this data works both ways. It can disprove liability just as powerfully as it proves it. Let's say someone claims they were rear-ended at a stoplight and they suffered serious injuries, but the delta V data from the EDR shows that the change in velocity in the crash was less than 5 miles per hour. So we're talking about a very minor impact. Airbags didn't deploy. The EDR data becomes critical evidence in evaluating whether the claimed injuries are consistent with the actual forces involved in the crash. So defense attorneys use this data too. It's not just for the plaintiffs. And that's fine, because the goal of the legal system is truth. Right? We want all of the evidence. We want a full picture, because if the evidence supports our client, we want it in front of a jury. And if there's something complicated, we need to address it and we need to know about it early. All right, let's talk about a distracted driver. So let's say a driver runs a red light and he T-bones another vehicle. The driver claims, well, the light was green. Our client had a witness who says their light was red. We pull maybe the infotainment system data from the at-fault vehicle. We serve a subpoena on their cell carrier. Here's what we find out. The driver received a text message 4 seconds before the crash. There's a Bluetooth event log showing active phone interaction. The GPS shows the vehicle never slowed at the intersection. Combined with maybe the intersection camera, if we were able to get it, which is it's only preserved for a short time, but if we got that, we now have a digital reconstruction of a distracted driver who blew through a red light without even looking up because he was too worried about a text message. And that's a very powerful piece of evidence in a case. All right, let me bring all this home. So here are the key takeaways from today's episode. First, understand modern vehicles are full of electronic data that survives a crash. Whether it's EDR data, ECM data, GPS, telematics, maybe dash cam footage, infotainment logs, all of this can be evidence. The second thing to understand is this data is perishable. If you or someone you love is in a serious crash, the single most important thing you can do is to contact an attorney immediately so that preservation steps can be taken before the data disappears forever. 3, the right experts make all of the difference. Whether it's an accident reconstructionist, a trucking safety expert, or maybe a digital forensic analyst, these are the professionals who transform raw data into trial-ready evidence. 4, electronic data doesn't lie, forget, or have a motive in the case. When it supports your case, it's among the most powerful evidence in a courtroom. And when it complicates your case, you want to know that early. And as an attorney, once I know there's evidence against my client that's going to hurt their case, I want them to know so they can make a decision on how to go forward on their case. Something else to think about is not every attorney knows how to find, preserve, and use this evidence. You need a law firm that is aggressive in the first hours and days after a crash, because that's when the battle for evidence can be won or lost. If you've been in a serious automobile crash, whether it involves a passenger car, an 18-wheeler, a delivery truck, or any type of commercial vehicle, I want you to know that you should reach out to an attorney as soon as possible to start preserving this evidence. All right. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have found this episode informative. I hope you found it entertaining. If you know somebody that you think might like this or that needs to know it, please share. Please subscribe. It really helps the channel. And as always, stay safe and stay informed.